We done a training last week and I made one simple line in the training and I said, you can't put AI in jail. You can't put AI in jail. So somebody's accountable.
Yeah, who would be accountable in that scenario? Under the new regulations is what I'm trying to get to.
It's too broad. Like, it's what they're going to be accountable for. Are they accountable because GDPR, because that's a part of it? Are they accountable because they didn't have the right regulatory structures in place? If the company's gone, can you really find them 7% of the money they made? This is why they're moving it back. When John touched on earlier, there was a lot of important stuff moved back. But what they're trying to do, and I want to be clear.
Welcome to the Hitchhiker's Guide to AI Governance, the podcast for anyone trying to make sense of intelligent machines, messy politics, and everything in between. But don't panic. Today, I'm in the far reaches of the galaxy speaking with John Webb-O'Rourke and Shane McCarthy from Ambrion AI, an Irish intelligence company purpose-built for the AI era. Ambrion was established to help organisations embed artificial intelligence as part of the organisation itself, not just part of its technology stack. AI cannot be bolted onto existing structures. It must be designed into the organisation's foundations, its systems, governance, data, and decision-making. John is a recovering lawyer and the Ambrion AI Managing Partner. Shane is a serial builder of AI native companies and a part founder of Ambrion AI. John and Shane appeared in episode 2 of my podcast, and that episode has proven to be the most popular episode to date. Welcome to the pod again, gentlemen. Top of the morning to you.
Good morning, Bruce.
Top of the morning to you too, Bruce. Delighted to be back.
I think, or should I say good day, Bruce, or good night, Bruce? That seems to be something that's quite popular.
It's evening.
Numbers, and thanks for having us back.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm delighted to have you back. Your podcast was so popular, and I'm sure listeners out there from around the world would like to hear a little bit more from you both. So what's the significance of August the 2nd for Ireland? What's coming up?
The EU AI Act moves into its next phase of implementation. The Ombudsman made decisions in April to extend certain situations, certain accountability, certain regulations until 2027, but there is a huge emphasis on certain sections of AI being tracked, being measured, regulatory structures have been put in place, and accountability practice has been put in place. So it's a big day from the perspective of understanding where your company needs to be, the infrastructure around AI that you need to have in governance, and fundamentally getting yourself prepped for what's coming. Things are changing very fast and there's a lot of stats to back it up. But I think it's the day where people have to get serious about governance in AI.
So, John, that leads me to the obvious question. Are people taking this change seriously?
In a nutshell, no, but I think that's a reflection of, well, I'd say the Western Hemisphere, because that means then that I can avoid saying it's just the Irish. But the reality, every day since we last spoke to you, Bruce, I would contend that people's awareness in general and in business of AI is improving. It's not just because of the UAI Act in Ireland. It is that people in business realize that they need to adopt AI. They need to adopt it for the betterment of their business. And in parallel with that, when they want to know about AI, they want to ensure that governance is in place so that AI works properly and that they're compliant. The governance piece is very much a conversation about AI as AI adoption itself.
So what's happening in the sense of companies now actively implementing AI governance? What are you seeing in that?
Okay, I'm on the director on the board of a national builders providers company. I am chair of the audit and risk committee. That company is now adopting AI and has AI governance and compliance built into its risk register, its daily practice. It's now been discussed at board level. It has a user policy, and thankfully Shane and I are involved then in Ambrion as advising that company. It's a big company with out of budget. It's very much one that is leading rather than following. It's seeing what it needs to do. And that's just kind of a practical example, I suppose, Bruce, of where we are seeing a significant company in Ireland that wouldn't, at the last time we spoke to, have such a regime and adoption in place. It has now.
Well, I want to come in on that, John. Like, that's one of many, and that's because you sit there.
Yeah.
And that's because we advise. So I don't want the slant to go on the other way. Irish companies are doing nowhere near enough. They're
Yeah.
like, and it's the same in Australia, it's the same in France, it's the same in Germany, it's the same in America. There is, we'll think about that later approach. There is, well, we done something. Well, you didn't. You used ChatGPT to create an AI policy without having any substance at the start of it to understand what that policy should be. And then the policy doesn't actually comply with what the governance standards are through the EU AI Act. So what you have is a lot of people, and I'm not saying this for the company John's in, they're doing it very well. We were with them last week. But that's because of our advice and guidance and our insights and because of John's role and capacity within that. But you have to be very frank about the fact that the statistics don't back up that governance has been implemented in the way that it could or should be, that boards are making conscious decisions with the right information to implement it in the right way, or that CEOs are involved in that decision-making cycle to understand what being compliant means through the EU AI Act or not. Like, there is endless. One of the core components that is mandatory within that operating environment is AI literacy. But there is no way you can tell me that companies in Ireland at SME size or MNC size have their team literate in AI to the level they need to be in alignment with what that is saying. There isn't. There is people literally going to AI to make policies that don't have verification built in, that don't have alignment to the EU AI Act or other regulations built in, and then they're implementing those into companies. And as far as the CEO or board would know, Bruce, it's, well, we have a policy, and they do, technically. Is it a good policy? Is it an accurate policy? Is it defensible? Is it aligned? Does it align to the regulatory standards? Are you compliant? No. Okay, so you don't have a policy then. You have a piece of paper that says the word policy on it, and you're still not compliant. So, it's like, I won't say it's the vicious circle, but in ways it can be. It's frustrating at the highest.
Bruce, and just I want to come back to what Shane said there. I mean, we know the EU AI Act on the 2nd of August is just around the corner. It's next weekend, in fact, or just after the weekend. Are we going to see any major change in Ireland, let alone Europe? Absolutely not. What we have seen, however, in the past couple of months is let's call it a significant change where the high risk deadlines have been extended out. Now, they've been extended, I think, through intense lobbying, because if they were to be implemented, the repercussions would have been very, very significant, right, across businesses. I think as the deadline approached, it's kind of been the carrot approach. It's the deadline is the stick, but now we've gone back because of the changes to, well, we'll try another carrot, and as I say, they've watered down the impact and of the regulation insofar as there's high risk issues within companies. I think, that's back out until the 2nd of December 2027. I think we'll probably be still here on the 1st of December 2027 with a situation that's very much the same, right? Now, Ireland has the EU presidency from now until the end of the year. And if we were to believe what we're hearing in our own local media, Ireland is to lead on the implementation of and adoption of AI. But Ireland is a small fish in a big pond in Europe. I'd be very proud to believe that they'll have achieved very significant implementation changes by the end of this year. But, I have my suspicions, I have to say. But bearing in mind what Shane has said, it's what is going to change things to make sure the businesses comply as of from the 2nd of August or by the 2nd of December 2027. I'd probably see one element of which that I see is banks are looking to see if their clients are AI compliant, if they've governance built in. Insurance companies are doing the same. And I think that element of it there, where if you want to get your money, you need to have the AI compliant, etc. That will make people or businesses do it. Auditors are now have an obligation on them to ensure that their clients of a certain size are AI compliant. So those three, the auditors, the banks, and the insurance companies, they're going to help the situation, and that will be good. But I'd like to think we'll be having a couple of more podcasts between now and the December 2027. But
Yeah.
I think we'll just see gradual change between this and that.
So isn't the real test though, John, come Tuesday next week, that if somebody has done the wrong thing, what are the penalties? Could they be fined for not being compliant?
Yeah. Okay. And this, yes, is the short answer. But there are various grades then based on turnover. I think the highest is about 7% of your annual turnover, going back to 2.5% and 1.5%
I
based
think that
on.
3% and 1.5%.
There you go. There you go. Thanks, Shane. But and again, but as in from next week, there's nobody going to be fined, or there's going to be no big case here, because the last thing that anybody will want to show is that they have fined the company significantly because they haven't been in compliance, to show the rest of the Europe or the rest of the world, we're going to make you step into place now. If they do, that. So the fines, certainly, is the exposure to the fines going to be there as in from next week? Absolutely. But do I think there's any monumental change? No, I would not. No, sorry, I want to be very clear here. AI consideration, adoption of AI is improving. But are the companies adopting it as fast as they should, and consequently the governance also in parallel? No, they're not. No, they're not.
Your other
So,
problem, Jack, going to be your other problem here is going, and this is the thing people don't talk about and I don't understand, is going to be the evolution of LLMs. Like if you look at Opus 5, right, it came out last Friday. So Opus 4.8 was good, or was. Then they released Fable 5. Now Fable 5 is let's call it a child of Mythos. Mythos is a system that they announced in March that is the most intelligent system in the world and had huge safety and security issues because of its sheer capabilities. Okay. Now, Opus 5, the evolution of Opus 4.8, comes out last Friday. But when you put it on a ranking score, if you were to measure across the top 10 things, Soul 5.6 on ChatGPT wins on 1, Fable wins on 3, and Opus 5 wins on the remainder. So the other thing you're not compensating for here or strategizing around is the sheer evolution of AI. The pace at which that system is getting intelligent. I mean, we all saw Hugging Face last week. I'm sure you saw it as well. I'm sure we're going to get onto it. But we saw what happened, where it breaks out of a sandboxed environment. They're running a test on Sol. It breaks out of a sandboxed environment and hacks into another system, spends millions upon millions upon millions in computing tokens to hack in to get an answer from another system. What does that mean for third-party vendors? What does that mean for you not being able to control or regulate your AI? What does that mean if you don't put guardrails down? Is it going to hack into your bank accounts? These are genuine, real things. Is it going to hack into your systems? Is it going to degrade other systems? Is it going to worm, they talk about worming in. What else is it going to do? And as LLMs evolve, our understanding and behaviors have to evolve. And if they don't evolve, then the LLM, you talk, Sam Altman done an interview Saturday on Relentless. Really interesting interview, because when you look at the numbers behind AI and you look at them not going for their IPO, and I won't go down just the area here, we'll keep this on governance, conscious of the podcast. But when you look at him on Relentless on Saturday, what he talked about was the singularity. He talked about, because he has to make a move and has to make a play where AI is going and how it's evolving and why he should keep being capitalized at the level he needs to be. And they didn't go for their $1 trillion IPO, or their $1 trillion IPO and etc. But what he's talking about in a simple way relevant to governance is the singularity. He's talking about a time when AI is smarter than a human. And when they get further on than that, it'll be from the singularity to super intelligence, which is where AI is smarter than every human in the world combined. But if he believes, and I don't think we're there yet, I want to be very clear, I don't agree with him. But if he thinks we're in the singularity, that means the AI is going to be smarter out competing what you want it to do. So if you don't put regulatory structures in place, if you don't put guardrail infrastructure in place, if you don't bake in governance at a foundational level, you will be exposed in ways you can't comprehend. You could be attacked in ways you don't understand. And unless you have security measures built into everything, you're as vulnerable as you've ever been in respect to your data, your safety, your security, your protection, etc. And that is
So
a real fragile place for business leaders and for boards to be, especially since they've had ample time to make this a central point, to make this a focal point and a real focus of what they want to do.
Yeah. So, Shane, I want to come back to the hugging face scenario. Put yourself forward, and let's say it's next month when the regulations are in place and you're using a piece of software in Dublin that, or perhaps it could be Galway, well, it's in the EU anyway, that is an LLM does break out of its sandbox and does cause some damage. Would that be a set of conditions or circumstances on which a regulator would, in fact, act? Like, are these LLMs subject to the EU Act? Can they be fined?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to give context because I was in a meeting on Friday and a lady brought up this thing re Hugging Face. So Hugging Face isn't going to happen to a user like us, not now. So what happened with Hugging Face is ChatGPT is testing an advanced model, much like Claude testing Mythos in March. They realized then as they're going through testing mechanisms, the sheer capability. So it's probably fair to say if we're on Sol 5.6 with ChatGPT, that ChatGPT, for argument's sake, is on Sol 6 or Sol 6.2. If you're just, if it's gone 5.6, 5.86, right? They're probably on 6 or 6.2. It's the same that Fable is like, it is Mythos and mine is 80%. That's what it is. It is a
Mm.
child of, right? So they have to take this technology and they create these really secure environments to test them in. Those are called sandboxes. So we're not using a sandbox environment. We're using LLMs that are live, that are tested, that are etc. And you'll have little nuances within those where it may do something sneakier, cheekier, hallucinate, or lie or
Mm.
misrepresent. Okay, that's where you need verification protocols, but we'll get onto that. In its most simple way, yes, they will be fine. There will be issues. But it's not even just that. It's the question you need to ask is right. In that sandbox environment, a company asked the AI to do something. The AI's answer was to go search and find and seek what it needed to and where it needed to. But what happens if that was water? What happens if that was healthcare?
Mm.
What happens if that was? What happens if that was? What happens if that was? If that has been testing something in that sandbox environment in alignment to global electricity, in alignment to oil supplies, in alignment to food being distributed worldwide, in alignment to, you could have had something really, really dangerous. So the message I took from it wasn't that. It's your problem here, and I don't want to go off in a different tangent. Right? Your problem here is there's two stories in AI. There's what's happening in AI that we can feel, we can see, we can touch, we can look at, we can engage. That's what's real. And then there's the stories that come around AI that are
Mm.
a whole lot less real. So when people say AI is really intelligent, AI is a mathematical equation that's really good at probabilistic reasoning and uses predictive modeling to understand what word or term should come next. What it is notoriously not good at, and which is where you'd be moving towards artificial general intelligence, where it has the same kind of mindset as a human, is second and third order effects, which is fundamentally if I do this, then this will happen and this will happen. If I go up to a bar and I say, can I get a drink? Then I will get a drink. And if I continue to do that, then I will be drunk. Whereas the AI will say, I'm going to go up to the bar 20 times. With no understanding of what happens after 20 drinks, what you may do, the environment you're in, how you're operating, what you might say, and what the consequences of those actions may be. And when you're Irish, that's a problem because we're notoriously love fighting, right? So I haven't on something very serious, but it's true
Yeah.
perspective of the major, and I want to answer your question specifically. The major LLMs have to tell a certain story because you need to capitalize these models into the billions or trillions. That's one side of it. Humans' experience of that and people at the forefront like us who are building thousands of systems, who are building stuff all over the world, have a much realer experience of what that is and what's happening. So I think the companies, very specifically, absolutely will be in a vulnerable position. I think that's why they're trying to create partnerships with governments. But I also think that's why adoption isn't going the way they want. Like since we've met or we chatted, or I think we might have mentioned in the last one, both OpenAI and Claude or Anthropic have made their own or created their own implementation and integration companies. Why? Because it's simply not going fast enough. So will they be fine? Yeah. Do they care? No, probably not. Will it cause issues? Yeah, because the leadership in companies don't understand the true issue here and the true size of the issue. Like it's incredible, Bruce, what's happening in a lot of
Mm.
ways. There's a lack of focus on the sheer magnitude of what could happen here. If you
Mm,
do it in the wrong way and set it up in the wrong way, it could eat your whole business. And I genuinely mean it. It could eat
mm,
your whole business. I think there's big changes that have to happen. I think understanding has to evolve. And I think the mixed
mm.
messaging coming from both sides of the coin are playing a big role in confusing what's actually happening and getting people ready.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand for the people listening around the world is what are the consequences or repercussions of this regulatory change? So there was an example that I can share with you that you'll be familiar with, which was Cursor. So in April, a car rental agency in Europe were using a system called Pocket OS, powered by Cursor AI. Now, overnight, the Cursor went rogue and it deleted not only the production database, but all the backups as well within 9 seconds. So when people got up in the morning to log in, they couldn't log in. There were no records. There was no production database. And the company was wiped out the very morning that people came to work to check in cars, check them out, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if that had happened next week with this new regulation in place, where would that sit? Who would be guilty? Who would be blamed for that?
We done a training last week, and I made one simple line in the question in the training, and I said, "You can't put AI in jail. You can't put AI in jail. So somebody's accountable."
Yeah, who would be accountable in that scenario? Under the new regulations is what I'm trying to get to.
It's too broad. Like it's
Oh,
what they're going to be accountable for. Are they
mhm,
accountable because GDPR, because that's a part of it? Are they
mm,
accountable because they didn't have the right regulatory structures in place? If the company's gone, can you really find them 7% of the money they made? This is why they're moving it back. When John touched on earlier, there was a lot of important stuff moved back. What they're trying to do, and I want to be clear and I want to answer your question, is they're trying to hold people accountable in the minimalist of ways to get people ready and to nudge it along. So in that moment, yeah, the company would have been held accountable. Any third party vendors where this may have happened would have been held accountable. And do I think Cursor would have been held accountable? No. They would have had to just make changes to their system because they would have given warnings with their system the same as everybody else that their system behaves in certain ways and you have to mind this or do this. So I would say in that scenario, Cursor aren't accountable. I would say the company using the system is accountable, and then the people who are in charge, and that's the bigger part is
mm,
you within the EU AI Act, there has to be ownership. So what works downstream, what works upstream, who's in charge of what. So if you're involved in supply chain as an example, there has, and we said this last week in the training, literally, there has to be somebody that is in charge of all AI at your company. And what I mean is, if you're in the factory, there's somebody in charge of AI there. If you're in the supply chain side, there's somebody has accountability here. And there's other accountabilities within that role because they can delegate down, but there is somebody that has to be in charge because of what I said. You can't
mm.
put AI in jail. There is somebody in charge. Would Cursor have got in trouble there? No. Why? Because it's the same with the other models. But people, individuals, and companies, and that's the other thing as well. Like, and I'll finish here. If companies don't align to getting people up to speed at the level they need to be, and then those, and this is an interesting point, like, and those people are held accountable, if AI literacy remains mandatory and you haven't done those exercises in your company, and then John has to take ownership of this implementation, even though he doesn't have the mandatory literacy, then what happens? Because you haven't upskilled me to have the level of understanding. By law, you're supposed to. You've then asked me to take accountability based on my role, and I don't have the skills, then X goes wrong. So you have a lot of ripples that are going to appear here very quick. And if people aren't conscious, and I don't want to scaremonger people, this is just rootless pragmatism. Those ripples will turn into waves, and hopefully nothing bigger, moving towards tidal waves of issues here.
Just a couple of points I want to pick up on there, Bruce, and listening to your question and the way that Shane explained it. We have kind of practical examples in Ireland at the moment where, because it has so many of the social media companies housed in Dublin, where they have been fined by our Irish ombudsman stroke ombudswoman. And I think at last count, the fines have been totaling somewhere in the region of north of $4 billion. Have they been collected? Absolutely not. They're being appealed. They'll continue to be appealed, and they'll be appealed to Europe and et cetera, et cetera. Now, so anything that might happen today, it'll be 3 or 4 years where something of magnitude, let's call it, right? Now, you've had examples then where I suppose one of the things we're seeing, notwithstanding the examples you've given, but we've seen examples of where some of the large accountancy firms have produced newspaper articles that have been misleading, and you can see it firsthand then. You can point the finger and say that was wrong, etc. It leads to a fine, and the fine is paid. There's bad publicity, right? But I think what we're going to see coming down the line is not the bad publicity, wrong article, news article point of view. It is going to be something that will lead to what happened with the example with the car rental company, that they literally lost their business. So you have an act, you're being told to implement best practice. And I think it's the best practice is what's incumbent on the companies or businesses. What Shane and I are very much trying to get out to businesses there is when you're trying to adopt AI, you have to put in the guardrails, you have to put in verification, you to embed governance, you to do the best things that you can to move forward. And if you do that, you're very much reducing and limiting any exposure to something going wrong out there. I mean, what we've seen as a change in the last 5 weeks, never mind the last 5 months or so, since we were last talking to you, I've seen it in myself. Shane will tell you, we weren't discussing this yesterday. We've seen where everybody's using agents now. Sorry, no, not everybody's using agents, but agents are being used now. We're using them through orchestrations, right? Where that will be in 3 or 4 weeks. I know he had a meeting with a business last evening in the UK, and the people are saying, well, we might revisit this in 3 or 4 weeks' time. But what will have changed in 3 or 4 weeks' time? Somebody needs, I wouldn't call it to get on the bandwagon, but they need to get on the rodeo horse, and they need to do their damnedest to ensure that they can get that horse to quieten down, because if they do, they'll be well on their way to adopting AI in the best possible manner and avoiding and protecting themselves against things that can go wrong because they decided to look after their own business properly from the get-go.
So is there any variation in how countries are adopting these changes, or are everybody taking a very minimalist approach? Like, is there anyone kind of leading the way? You mentioned Ireland before, from an EU perspective, to lead the way, but is there anybody that's kind of standing out that's doing something different, or that you can see from your vantage point?
I don't think so, if I'm being very honest. What you have is silos competing with each other. The Middle East competing with America, competing with Europe, competing with Asia. That's what you have. You have different structures within those environments. But you have to go look at the numbers, Bruce. I mean, fundamentally, AI adoption is slow. Technology capabilities are increasing fast. There is opportunities presenting in ways the human mind can't necessarily comprehend yet. But what you have is, you see, I think it's what they're doing differently is different. Sorry to put it that way, but when you look at what's happened in America and you look at the launch of Fable 5 on that Friday X amount of weeks ago, and then within a 2-hour window they had to pull Fable 5. So what you're seeing happening is jurisdictional areas competing. So what did Europe do? Europe went away and set down a structure where they now want to fund European companies. So not American companies in Europe, European companies that will not move to America, because there is laws and policies in America that if the US government wants to access X or Y within your company, any data, doesn't matter whether it's private, doesn't matter whether its jurisdiction is in Europe. If you're based out of America and you're operating in Europe, you can access any information on anything. So I think there's very different discussions. I don't think most of the discussions at the moment that are taking place, and it's why they've been extended and extended. The EU Ombudsman extended this 3 to 4 times. And when you look at the structures around how they're visualizing it or how they're extending it, they delayed it. So standalone higher risks going until December 2nd, 2027, but product embedded systems run until the 2nd of August 2028. So they've added on the bones of 18 months here. And why did they do that, if not more? Because they needed that, because companies weren't moving fast enough, because the understanding wasn't there. So let's look at some of the stats. You have 0.4% of the world that can build with AI. You have 0.6% of the world paying for AI. You have another 30 odd percent of the world that have used a free version of AI, and the rest of the world has never ever used AI. And so the that innovation adoption curve is relatively slow in comparison to what it could be. Now let's take a second set of stats. The behaviors in the adoption and the growth rate of LLM models, of their capabilities, and then the statistics around capability overhang. That users get around 3% of the optimal value that they could get from using AI. That means they're getting 1/33 of the capability that they could be getting. That should scare the absolute out of people. Don't know if I can curse there, but that needed to be said. It should, and it very much should. And then you go to the third set, and they're less stats and more behaviors. And what you have is the geopolitical race that is taking place between where LLMs are, the models that they're taking, what safety and security should be. I mean, Carson Young came out and put out a piece, the CEO of NVIDIA, and got it signed. Even ChatGPT had to come back and sign it after the fact. The only one that didn't was Claude. All the big companies came in, and what they talked about was open source. So is there loads of changes happening in companies or countries? No. What they're really trying to do is to understand how AI can work and operate. What they're really trying to do is understand how do they capitalize. When you look at the recovery and resilience facility in Europe, I mean, they have the bonds of, I think it's 570 billion, 577 billion, 360 billion of that has gone into funding in the capacity of grants, and 217 billion is gone into funding in respect to loans. It's a performance first based instrument, but that is European wide. And that is needed European wide because a country can capitalize to the level that it needs to be doing the moves that it needs to do within AI. And you, like Ireland's government, do they have the money to go pump 50 billion into the startup scene? No, they don't. And they'll tell you they don't. Is that what probably needs to go in to get Ireland EU or AI ready? Most likely, if not more. And I don't just mean into data centers, because we have a huge cohort of them. And I think per populace, we have the biggest amount in the world, or we're in the top three. So when you take a step back and you take a deep breath and you look at the behaviors that are taking place, you're fundamentally saying that companies aren't capitalized and have a severe lack of understanding. You have capability overhang, which means we don't get the value from the AI and don't have a true understanding of how to get that value. And the ones we would look to for support and for that understanding are governments, and they're too busy fighting, be that data centers, policies, how they need to change their own infrastructures and architectures, how fast this tech is moving, and then the geopolitical nature of Donald Trump can be in America on a Friday. There's weeks of discussions that have gone on Fable 5. There is thousands and thousands of tests that have been done. And then he can cut off access through Anthropic, through regulation that basically means anybody in Europe, and including people who worked in Anthropic who weren't American, have no access to that model. Now, that is a huge issue, but it also shows you the sheer power of the regulatory stances that will be taken if models are too good. And now Europe is in a very vulnerable position because China has gone the open source model and they've millions of people trying to build. America has gone a different model on pricing, and that model is proving not to be effective, meaning ChatGPT and Claude. Claude is $56 per token at the high end when you're looking at Fable. Opus is in and around $25 when you're looking at it. Whereas Grok, Gemini, DeepSeek, Kimi, the other models, the Chinese ones, they're trying to give it to you for 75 cents. Grok, Gemini are trying to give it you one for 150. Sam Altman is charging you $25 and Daria is trying to charge you 56. And those two models at the front are supposed to be the most investable and bring the biggest, or the model, the underlying. So my point here, Bruce, and it's a long-winded way to explain it, is the focus isn't there because the focus is on protecting what our futures will be. The focus is on, are we overexposed in Europe versus in Australia versus in America? The focus is on, is there a bubble here? Because these numbers don't make sense. And that's why Sam Altman is framing as the singularity now. And that's why, and that's why, and that's why. So to answer very specifically, is there countries? Yeah, there's unique things, and France released their own AI model, and the UK and is separate from Europe are trying to do their own thing in the way that they do it. Where it's fundamentally different, Bruce, is the rules, how they track AI. So you have certain standards that are in the UK versus Ireland versus other parts of Europe, and that's where it differentiates per country. But the overarching problems are common across the world, and there's big problems there, to be fair.
Well, our government, you talked about fragmented government and fighting amongst themselves about how they should adopt AI. Well, our federal government has recently set up a central office for the regulation of data centers, and hopefully the overall AI adoption model for Australia, because when we put railways in, all the states had their own gauge. So the distance between the tracks was different. So trains from Victoria couldn't go to South Australia. They had to be unloaded and reloaded onto their tracks, for example. And that's what happens when you don't take a national approach to things that are clearly infrastructure that everybody will use. So the Australian government has established this central office of the AI, which has only just been announced in the last few weeks. In addition to that, they've created a responsible use of AI for government, which is one way of working for all federal agencies to adopt. Tied to that is a governance framework that's been developed by the federal government, which is a pretty good framework. And what they've said is each agency should appoint a person to be head of AI. Another agency might have a person who's 65 but never touched AI in their life is appointed head of AI for that agency. It's a case of, and like you said before, we've got the piece of paper, but is it effective? We've got the person who's heading up AI in an agency, but they may not have the skills or the knowledge or the background to be useful in that role. But hey, at least we've appointed someone in that role. What's happening in Ireland in terms of government adopting AI and kind of leading the way, because that's where a lot of public information is being stored. And therefore, you would think that the government would be one of the most important places to have good governance in place.
Yeah, just a couple of comments around that. I'm always kind of intrigued, and I better watch what I say here now, Bruce, because in relation to Australia, I'd like to think that everything you have said there in relation to Australia, that Ireland and Europe is more advanced, right? A couple of things just to come back on what Shane said there. Europe as a bloc of countries of 27, excluding Britain, have reacted more quickly on anything that affects them politically as a result of the Ukraine war. I think there's a lot more kind of coming together here. And then you have the President of the United States, who shall remain nameless, and Europe sees that it needs to take a singular actions that protect itself. However, as Shane alluded to, the decisions taken around Fable 5 have shown that politics has now been brought into the use of AI. So no matter what you decide in Australia, or what we decide in Europe, or indeed Britain or whatever, right now it's America and China, except there's maybe one or two outliers there. But we have a situation where AI could be pulled from everyone in the world by a decision of Donald Trump. And yet, in addition to that, you have the companies, Anthropic, OpenAI. I think it's OpenAI offering 5% of the company to the American government, free, gratis, etc. In Ireland, we've witnessed the American government invest in Intel. They employ about 5,000 people here in Ireland. The investment has turned around Intel's performance. They're now producing AI chips. Their books are huge. But again, it's the global impact of a decision that might be made in America around whether it is the chips or indeed the use of AI and the LLMs means it's totally outside of our control. And it's not something that can be corrected overnight. But I would say that Europe, as a result of what's happening in Ukraine, Britain have actually become much more involved in the actual day-to-day operations of Europe because they have to be. Geographically, they absolutely have to be. So while they're saying there's Brexit and they're outside, in reality, if anything, every decision they're making now is becoming more and more aligned to Europe. And I think it is Europe, Britain are trying to do whatever they can. And Shane, you might have a view on this, but it's years away from where they will be singularly standalone without having to rely on America. And at the same time, then probably being attracted. China is taking every possible action it can to make sure it looks far more appealing to Europe and the rest of the world than America is. So, and so far as they can, I think Europe is taking positive actions, and I do think Ireland is more advanced. But what impact or what changes they can implement over the next couple of years, that will, as long as Donald Trump is there, he can make a decision when he wakes up in the morning, which means, we're all in trouble.
Companies have no security. Companies have they have no security. You could go and spend hundreds of millions and invest it into AI, and if you're operating off of one of the major player systems, you have no leg to stand on. And the other thing I wanted to bring in is there's different ways to look at it, right? And I just wanted to get the language right. So Europe is trying to use a lot of rules-based mandates, right? But there's also principle-based regulation. There's also standards-based regulation. So like using technical standards from recognized bodies to define what compliance should look like in practice. But there's risk-weighted regulation, there's outcome-based regulation. So countries need to decide within that what they're trying to do. And you've lots of different ways you could look at it. And some countries are going the rules based and then you're held accountable, like you said, and who is accountable, etc. But other countries are trying not to do that and they just want the outcomes. And it's differentiated even within Europe as to how that's why you've so much discrepancy, as John touched on. I didn't get it before we come on the call or at the start, that there was an endless amount of lobbying in the first 6 months of the year on moving these regulations. And that's because there's so much differentiation within Europe. At least in America, you have one country, you have all those states, but you have one country. In Europe, you have 27 different countries and you're trying to get them all on the same page. And what Germany and France want may be very different with the pace of adoption in Italy or Spain or Ireland. Ireland is in a good place for adoption, but you have major economic players within the European landscape that are nowhere near the standard they need to be. The level of AI, the evolution of AI, how it's been implemented, integrated, or adopted within operating environments for countries or for companies within that country. So it's, we say this, we're in the greatest era to create change the world has ever lived in. Where somebody can sit down and set up, one person can become a billionaire by setting up companies and systems that work. You can help people in ways that we could never ever comprehend having those capabilities before. But with great power comes great responsibility. And that's really, really important. So I love John's points on a lot of that. Yeah.
So think about Christmas. It's about 6 months till then. What do you think will happen in the next 6 months, John? Will you see more failures? Will you see more catastrophic failures? Will the regulation have made any difference at all to those under the EU arrangements?
I do think they're going to be significant. I wouldn't call them necessarily failures. I think there will be decisions taken to use AI. There won't be governance baked in. There won't be guardrails properly used. There'll be people advising consultancy firms, and those consultancy firms will be advising their clients. And to me, that's a recipe for disaster, right? So do I think companies will want to adopt AI, and with the act in place, they'll have to respect the regulation and do it in a manner after the 2nd of August that they didn't have to necessarily do it all along? That's a good thing. But I actually think that people will be misled by others that are out there saying, I'm qualified to show you how to adopt AI, etc. And within that vendor alignment to the client, I think that there are going to be significant problems, which won't manifest themselves in somebody saying, oh, by the way, you owe me 7% of your turnover as a fine, etc., etc. We're aware of a semi-state government agency that's using an LLM where there was a data breach, and they've been told with circa 3,000 users to change their LLM because there's a data threat to that. So where there are holes, it's likely that a lot of them will be fixed, but there will be the likes of the KPMG ones that you see in the media, etc. I said there'll never be a newspaper article again that'll be written by AI because of what has happened. It's not necessarily defined. It's actually the disclosure that a big firm's name is appearing.
Yeah, but can I add to that? Like, this has happened 8 times since January. In Ireland, in America, in Australia. Those are the ones we know about that are public. Okay. So how come nobody has learned a mistake? Is that not a question people should be asking? You have
Yeah.
major and the biggest ones in the world, and the issue is always the same: verification. There are standards on verifying info and the quality of info. I have a news desk built. That's why I'm pushing back on this. And it has 34 journalists, and they're all AI. And there's an editor in chief at the top of that. There are 7 supervisors that verify information. There are 7 managers that verify the structure, the operational ins and outs, etc. Tokenomics, all of it. And there's 18 AI journalists. And I say that because I have, with the utmost of confidence, to a point nearly arrogance, that they're bulletproof in how they produce articles. Why? Because we have verification structures put in place, because we have verification loops, because we have standards of what is credible and not credible, what is verifiable, what is sourced, etc. So my point is, a worry that I would have in this space is that people aren't learning from what has happened before. So a lot of these big things, and John alluded to it there, and I loved it. He's so accurate on what he said. The third party vendors. A lot of the big issues that are taking place in AI, or where hacking is taking place, even including some of the biggest LLMs in the world, or the biggest AI companies in the world, is through third-party vendors. So why isn't there third-party vendor policies? Why aren't people replicating strong third-party vendor policies? Why isn't this the first thing that major companies are doing, is to close off, to understand, to dissect, to track, to trace, to organize all of those, to build them all down, to understand where gaps or exposures are, to have your own policy of, if you want to be a third party vendor into my company, here is the standards you need to have. And if you don't have those and can't prove those standards, then you can't be a third party vendor to my company. It's actions like that, it's behaviors like that, it's thinking like that that has to change. And if it doesn't, you're going to have more and more of these issues, bigger fear coming in, bigger gaps appearing in capability overhang. And fundamentally, it's just not going to be good. You'll have just a seismic shift in the space with people at the top who have it done right, and the people here who don't have it done right. While all the time Elon Musk is saying we're 10 years out from the biggest piece of abundance that humanity has ever entered, and that the world over will be abundant in a way we've never imagined. Not boring at all. You have a great name on this, like the way you've titled this podcast, because there is a lot of there's a lot coming into it, like, depending on who you are or how you see things. Are we hitchhiking, or are we in the galaxy already? What kind of galaxy are we in, and is it safe and secure, or is it not? You be hitchhiking back out of the galaxy because you weren't safe and secure, and you're not in that industry anymore. I mean, I may be smiling about it, but it's also true. It is.
Well, we've had, just on that point about having that third party risk, really the discussion in Australia has been about cybersecurity risk for those third parties, because what's happening is companies are not vetting appropriately their third party software providers. And that's where the risks are being introduced into the organisation. Now, we've had risk directives put out by 5 different authority bodies here in Australia: the Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority, the Australian Signals Directorate. We've also had the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, which regulates all of the corporates here in Australia. They've all put out directives that this is what you should do, not what you have to do, because it's not regulated yet. So it's a recommendation that companies should do this third-party vetting of their software suppliers as part of good governance. Now, that's only a recommendation. It's not a legal requirement or a compliance requirement, but they're all signalling that this may lead to regulation in the future. But to manage risk, it's something that companies should be doing. But what they should be doing and what they actually are doing, there's a long way between those two things, right?
Or what they know how to do.
Yeah.
Like, I think within governance, within safety, within security, a discussion needs to be had on the level of capabilities that you're now dealing with. I'm from a place in West Limerick. It's in rural Ireland. I used to live beside a chicken farm. There's loads of fields around me. Okay. The capabilities I now have on a worldwide level to be able to build and design and architect and construct with AI are stuff I couldn't even comprehend having 2 years ago. So I think there needs to be a discussion at a regulatory level in what we need to empower people with and how we need to enhance their understanding. So I agree with your point, and that needs to be regulation. And I'm sure no different to the EU AI Act and the shifts and the distance they've put between dates and etc. No different in Australia. It's implementation. It's trying to understand the patterns of behaviors and what's working, what isn't. what environment we should be going. Are we going rules based? Are we not? Are we going a different way, outcome based, whatever? But a severe issue within all of that is just understanding, Bruce. So they
Mm,
can, this is something you should do. Okay, but how do I do it? How
mm,
do I
mm,
my company for cyber security protection or for online safety against systems that we've never had access to
mm,
test how protected we are? Like if my task can come out and Hugging Face is €1 billion company, like multi-billions, they will have some of the best safety and security in the world. And ChatGPT's agent can slick out of his sandbox, head on over to Hugging Face and spend millions upon millions in tokens trying to hack in and gets in. Okay. Hugging Face has never had to deal with that level of attack. It has
mm,
never had an AI with that capabilities try to attack it. So I think it would be fair to say that we, us, you, me, John, leaders in our space, need to start having some different conversation.
mm,
And we need to educate ourselves well enough in environments where we can educate others and empower them with the understanding, with the mechanics, with the processes that allow them to stay safe, to stay protected, to be compliant, and to have governance at a foundational level. But that's
mm,
easier said than done because a lot of the challenges we're going to face across the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, the world has never been prepared to face. We have
mm,
never skilled or taught or educated on how to deal with
mm.
any of this. So here, Bruce, figure it out. And by
Hey,
the way, company, your future, and all your staff and all of your money and everything is on the line. But here it is. You're gonna go
all
up
right.
against.
I wanted to leave you with a couple of things. So the first thing is there's a famous quote by Douglas Adams, the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And the quote goes like this: I love deadlines. I love the sound they make as they whoosh by. So that
Well,
is what's happening on Sunday. You're just going to hear this
yeah,
as these regulations come in, but not much else will change, right? That's what I'm hearing from you gentlemen. Yeah.
unfortunately,
Yes is
So,
the answer.
yeah, the other thing I wanted to do with you both, which I hadn't done on the previous podcast, is because it's something I introduced after your episode. But if you can read this, can you read that, gentlemen?
it
You want
happened.
to say okay?
Yeah, it's my second favorite book. Now, this has got a list of 150 hey, happens, get over it quotes. So I'll start with you, Shane. Pick a number between 1 and 150. 66, yeah?
Thanks.
66. Okay. Now, when I read out this quote, you've got to tell me what this quote means for you. So, quote number 66 is: ever tried, ever failed. No matter, try again. Fail again, but fail better. From Samuel Beckett. What does that mean to you, that quote?
That's my life in a quote. Or you don't
This
succeed.
is my life.
No, I think it embodies everything in AI. I mean,
Yeah,
you'll see me here, Bruce, and I can do amazing things with AI, and I can
yeah.
build a ton of systems, and I can build at a volume that most of the world can't comprehend. But you also don't see the torture, the
Mm,
failure, the mistakes, the issues, the gaps, the late nights that I can't go to sleep for 3 days, and you've AI psychosis.
yeah.
And I'm being really serious, and just John will
Mm,
tell you where you're buried in certain things, and then you get to the end of it all, and it all breaks. Or you put something like this is true, you
yeah.
put something live and it's live and you've tested it and it works and it's excellent and you've done 100 different tests and you've gone through your checklist of we put this live and you've done all of that. And then I
Yeah.
go to show Bruce on the very first time and the whole thing breaks.
Mm,
So in the AI world, a lot of it is going to be try and try again and fail better. And I fully agree with it. It would
mm.
be, I think we're a never-ending improvement, and I think that quote embodies that truly.
Book's got an irony of matching perfectly what
Yeah,
number people say to their quote
and
that resonates with
that would be my life as an artist. Yeah,
Darling,
genuinely, and I've been deadly. If you had to put my into a quote, that is as apt
yeah.
as it could be. Yeah,
I'll
I love
put
that.
that quote in the show notes so that you know you can find it again.
Love
John, what would be a number for you between 1 and 150?
111.
111. I think you're the first one that's gone into 3 digits. So 111. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. How does that sit with
Y-
you, John?
Yeah, but there's one word that comes to mind as a result of all of that. Is resilience immediately comes to mind. Yeah. I'm here with Shane, where although we've known each other over close on 20 years. It was at an event in Kilmallock that I think we mentioned the Tangible Group in the past, where I suppose really considered AI. I needed a career alternative at 60. I was in the midst of a business failing, and there's legacy issues from that. But am I in something that I know will see me through all of the past failures and difficulties which have led to? I think that I have an enormous amount of resilience, Bruce. I might as well use the opportunity here, Bruce, to introduce you to a new business Shane and I are launching, which is Meridian Intelligence, which is basically a culmination of my 40 years of business and, my recovering lawyer and all other areas. And I'll send you on a document which gives you an overview of it. But basically, that new business, which has 7 intelligence managers across a range of disciplines, plus my expertise and also the brain that Shane has developed to support it, I think epitomizes all the difficulties that I have gone through that have strengthened me. And as I said, the word resilience there. And I think I'm very well placed to be successful in the AI era because of all that's happened in the past. If that all makes sense.
Well, it seems to me like that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? So whether that be mind or body or both, it strengthens the mind going through adversity.
So much of it in the AI world, and I just want to give that. And I said this to John a few weeks ago. Belief in your capabilities, your intelligence, what makes you unique. That AI is a resource and a tool and a support, and it can give you incredible powers or capabilities. But it'll go down to belief and understanding. Get the understanding in the right way to develop the belief more, and keep compounding that together, and you'll be in a great place.
And I come back just very quickly to an earlier comment you passed about where the appointments are taking place in Australia. And you pointed out that a 29-year-old had been appointed and a 65-year-old appointed. And I just point out that the 65-year-old has every chance of learning what the 29-year-old has learned to date, but the 29-year-old has another 36 years to live to understand what the 65-year-old has learned. And my father used to call it, it's called the bought experience. It's what has cost you, what has suffered, and I don't want to sound that, but, every day is a learning day, and if that 29-year-old, the first thing he should do is pick up the phone and speak to the 65-year-old.
Well, they were
And that's what
examples.
happened kind of with Shane is I opened my eyes and ears to try and understand what Shane had learned in the previous 12 or 18 months. There are very few would do that willingly, but we've always had this kind of a relationship of well, what's new, what's happening out there. I probably have had that entrepreneurial mindset to here, and 'tis the best mindset to have. Alongside this, on the one hand, I'd call him a genius. On the other hand, I'd call him a lunatic. But somewhere between the two of them are, and I mean that respectfully. I'm not just saying it for the sake of it, but combined, we do okay,
Yeah, well, the example I gave was just a hypothetical because the people that they're appointing into those roles are all different sorts of people from all different sorts of backgrounds. And there's no standards or requirements of what an AI officer in a government agency should or could look like. So I think the appointments were made. They appointed somebody primarily at this stage, and then I think they're going to work the rest out as they go along, which is pretty much we're building the plane as we're flying it, right? And that's kind of what this all feels like.
Sort of
And
funny it was, isn't it? They jump off. Isn't that the famous saying? How do you know a startup founder? They're the one who jumps off a cliff and builds the parachute on the way down.
yes, yeah. And I think the employees and entrepreneurs think differently. An employee could probably never keep up with an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur could never probably work in a job in an organization where they need to fit in.
It'd be an absolute
So
disaster inside the company.
in order to have that satisfaction of achieving something, you need to go through that pain to get there. And that's what a great feeling when that happens. Just like County Mayo finally won the GAA All Ireland after 75 years.
1951 was the last time they won it. They've lost 13 finals since then. Exactly. It's worth it a whole lot more because you've
Yes.
earned it.
Well, in the Hitchhiker's Guide to AI Governance, we cover trying to make sense of intelligent machines, messy politics and everything in between, including the All Ireland GAA final. So we're across new territory now, but for the people listening out there, don't panic. We've been speaking with John Webb-O'Rourke and Shane McCarthy from Ambrion AI, and it's been another fascinating conversation with you both. And it's going to be Sunday. Are you going to pop a cork on Sunday, John, or how are you going to celebrate this momentous day in world history?
The governance that we see out there that is there is by doing it daily. And I think governance, when you mention the word in Ireland, it's like, oh, it's those pesky police again. It's this or that. It's not. It's discipline. It's just doing the right thing in the right way. And if you can have a sexy part of governance, it's doing that because it means your outcomes are way better. And you're not, winking in the dark, as they say,
Yeah, so you'll have a pint of Guinness on Sunday, I'm
Oh,
sure.
just one. There's never just one, Bruce.
Yeah, or maybe I'll finish off with some Jameson. What about you, Shane? What are you doing on Sunday to mark this momentous occasion?
An article that will scare people into action. That's what I'm doing. Well, I love the timing of this and when we were shooting because we had a chance to prep for this as much as we had a chance to prep for the D-Day, and it worked really well in synchronicity. So we will have me knowing the stats and the facts and all the other stuff because you have to be up to date on all these. But look, in its more simple way, I think more than saying you write an article to scare them into action, I think it's write a heartfelt piece that helps them understand what to do. Our job isn't to sit here and beat our chest and tell people the world is going to end. Our job is to give them the understanding, the toolkit, the skills, etc., to make this work. In its more simple way, Bruce, I think it's a day to show people what's possible, what's plausible, and what happens if they don't take action. And if we can give them some understanding, some tools, and some resources to help them on that track and show them what good looks like and what the standard should be, I think me and John, along with our other colleagues in Ambrion, will have done what we wanted to do, which is be there as a support and a resource for people.
Thank you, gentlemen. And
that and the point of Guinness as well.
Of course. And just a shout out to anybody who's listening from County Mayo, congratulations. And I do hope that you celebrate for the next 365 days. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Thank you.